is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. Short and sweet one today, talking about NBA surprises and disappointments now that we're past the trade deadline. But first, I think this counts as big news. As I try to see how far I can take this sports media thing, or media thing in general, I've realized that involves writing more and sharing my writing. Not only do I enjoy writing, but everyone who has achieved things I want to achieve is a great writer. I've had the opportunity to write for platforms like The People's Beat and Franchise Tag UK. You should see me start putting out some more Charleston-related writing on The People's Beat in the spring, but I want and need to write about more. So I'm starting a blog newsletter type deal on a platform suggested to me called Beehive to put all of my writing that doesn't fit the other platforms available to me. It's called The Show Notes, and it's going to be a little bit of everything. As of right now, my aim is to get a newsletter out once a week, most likely Wednesday or Thursday. The newsletter will include links to the episode of this very show that's come out on Monday, links to anything else I've written for another platform, and original stuff I write specifically for the show notes. It'd be awesome if you signed up for the newsletter, but you can just visit the website and check out what I write if you'd like to do that as well. I certainly hope to make money off this one day, but it's free now, and I hope to keep it free for readers as long as possible and make my money off of advertisers. The support y'all have given me on here has helped me get to a point where I want to do even more, so I can't thank you enough for that. I will keep giving you updates on how everything is going, and links to the show notes will be in the show notes of this episode, which is hopefully less confusing than it sounds. All right, let's talk about the NBA. The trade deadline just passed, and while we will still see some movement on the buyout market, I feel like things are stable enough for me to give some thoughts on what surprised me and disappointed me up to this point in the season. First up, a big time surprise for me, so much so that I had to drive up and see it with my own two eyes. Went to Charlotte to see the Hornets play the Raptors last Wednesday. The Hornets did what they do and they lost. No surprise there. What is surprising is that in spite of how bad that team plays, how good Brandon Miller is. Last year, in his only season at Bama, Miller was good with some flashes of greatness, but all of that was overshadowed by his involvement in a murder that was allegedly committed by one of his former teammates, in which Miller unwittingly brought the murder weapon to the scene. Nothing I've seen or heard since that would lead me to believe that he had any actual involvement in the crime that was committed, and the police say he's been cooperative, but mostly due to how Bama handled the entire situation, it came across like he was an accomplice. If I put myself in his shoes, it would be hard to lock in and focus on basketball with all that swirling around off the court. You would have to think it affected his ability to play to some degree. But I really didn't give him the benefit of the doubt in that regard, even though it looked like he completely forgot how to play basketball by the end of the season. This is someone who was hyped as an elite shooter who went 8 for 41 from the field in 3 NCAA tournament games. That's 26% from the field. That's terrible. So when the Hornets got the second pick and everyone knew Victor Wembanyama was going to go number 1, I could not imagine a world in which them drafting Brandon Miller second would not end up being a huge mistake for one reason or another. For starters, this was a team full of immature players and players who had been in varying degrees of legal trouble. Adding Miller to the mix seemed like bad optics at the very least, and these aren't necessarily guys you want influencing your young rookie. As far as basketball was concerned, it's hard to understate just how bad he looked at the end of the year. And where would he fit on a roster full of wings whose primary skill was scoring? To me, this had bust written all over it. I am proud to say all indications are I was wrong. He has looked like a potential star as the season has gone on, the third best rookie behind Big Vic and Chet Holmgren. He had a ridiculous sequence against the Raptors where he made an incredible chase down block on RJ Barrett on one end, then ran back on offense to hit a deep 3 on the other end that should have been a 4-point play opportunity. How many players in the league right now can make that play? Especially for a losing team that's going nowhere this season. But we've already seen him trying to lead, yelling at guys to get back on defense, which is exactly what this Hornets team is missing. Their moves at the trade deadline seem to show they might understand that. They brought in guys who play hard and are professionals like Grant Williams and Seth Curry, and they got rid of some pieces who you can't exactly say that about. They still need to move on from Miles Bridges for multiple reasons, and I would probably try to get rid of LaMelo Ball as well, but the franchise franchise does appear to be headed in a better direction, and Brandon Miller is a big reason why. Build around him. Moving on, my big disappointment player-wise is Shaqtin A Poole. We knew the issues this guy had heading into the season. He doesn't seem like a bad person, but just unserious, not really a team player, not really a winning player. Certainly someone in need of a change of scenery, so getting traded to the Wizards seemed like the perfect move for him. He'd get to play for a team with no real expectations and fully lean into his Shaqtin A Poole-ness. With free reign to do as he pleases on offense, it wasn't hard to imagine he'd be near the top of the league in scoring. Would it look pretty? Of course not. I mean, sometimes, but it'd probably be a ridiculous ISO fest game after game, loss after loss. But again, no expectations for this team, just be entertaining. Well, he's been entertaining in the same way 90 Day Fiancé is entertaining, just a complete train wreck. This guy stinks now. It's not just that he's bad, but how he's bad. His Shaqtin A Poole reel from this season alone is longer than the Wolf of Wall Street. He's inventing new ways to turn the ball over and shoot air balls on a nightly basis. It feels like we've forgotten this, but he had a historically bad rookie season, and while he's not quite that bad, it does look like he's more of that guy than he is a discount Steph Curry. Draymond shouldn't have punched him, but if he was walking in every day playing like that and talking cash shit to me, then I might have had to release a somber black and white documentary explaining my side of things as well. I hope this is a lesson to other players. The grass isn't always greener. Everybody wants to be the man, but maybe you aren't cut like that. And if you aren't, it can get ugly in a hurry. As we move on to teams, my first surprise is the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've been at the top of the Western Conference for most of the season. While I did think they would improve some this season, it's been the reason for their improvement that has shocked me the most. Anthony Edwards is the star here. We saw this coming last year. He keeps improving on both ends of the court each year, and while he's not quite an MVP candidate yet, it's not hard to imagine him getting to that point. He is just 22 years old. But I wouldn't categorize what he's doing as particularly surprising. What is surprising is the defensive resurgence of Rudy Gobert and how that's led the Timberwolves to being the best defensive team in the NBA this season. I love making fun of Rudy. Everybody does. And I still think the Timberwolves got robbed in the trade bringing him over from Utah, but he looked flat out lost on the defensive end last year. And when that's where almost all of his value lies, you have a huge problem. We've seen defense-only bigs like DeAndre Jordan and Tyson Chandler get around this age and start looking cooked. So we really had no reason to think Rudy was going to be any different. Turns out he might be. He's bounced back in such a big way that he's in the hunt for his 4th Defensive Player of the Year award, which would tie him for the record shared by Ben Wallace and Dikembe Mutombo, and the Timberwolves are on track for a top 3 seed in the West. Now, Rudy has a history of getting schemed off the court in the playoffs, and the T-Wolves offense is playing under its potential, but that's a problem for another day. They have exceeded expectations so far, so good for them. The Los Angeles Clippers are right up there with the Timberwolves in the West for a surprising reason themselves. They're actually healthy. I know, I can't believe it either. At the risk of jinxing this, James Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi are each on track to play the most games they've played in a season since pre-COVID. Can you even remember what the world was like before COVID? I also cannot stress how good of a coach Ty Lue is. I don't know why the Lakers didn't hire him. You knew he was a good coach because he was holding this team together the past couple of seasons despite all the injuries. Now they're healthy, but he's had to work in Harden, who came at the beginning of the season, and PG and Kawhi essentially because they've missed so much time. It wasn't smooth at first. They started the year 3-7, but look at him now. He's even figured out how to use Russell Westbrook effectively off the bench. And it's not like they're just beating up on bad teams. They've beaten the Nuggets, forcing Jokic into a 9 for 32 shooting night. They've beaten the Suns. They've beaten OKC. They beat the Celtics in Boston. I still like the Nuggets coming out of the West, but the Clippers, as crazy as it is to say, might be the next best contender. Speaking of contenders, the teams who have disappointed so far this season are former champions who were still supposed to be contenders this year. Let's start with my Los Angeles Lakers. My main concerns heading into this season was the health of LeBron and AD. LeBron had the foot issue last year and he's old, and AD is AD. So imagine my surprise when both of them have been pretty healthy and playing well, but this is still a middle of the road team. It didn't seem like that would be the case watching the in-season tournament, but I've seen this enough to know how it goes. That's why even with LeBron passive-aggressively tweeting and Darvin Ham holding on to his job for dear life, I wasn't the least bit surprised that the team made no moves before the trade deadline. The D'Angelo Russell re-signing was sold as we can't let him leave for nothing, so we're going to bring him back, give him a chance to raise his trade value so we can get a good piece that's a better fit, maybe someone who actually puts in effort on defense and doesn't make ridiculous turnovers at some point during this season. As scripted, D'Angelo stunk to start the year, but looked like a halfway decent player heading into the trade deadline. Being as I've seen this before, I know good and well what happens if you let his good play stop you from trading him. He'll turn right back into a pumpkin as soon as the deadline hits. So naturally, the team kept him. When you see what players who would seemingly be good fits like Seth Curry or Buddy Hield went for, then you look at this roster and how no moves were made, it's very hard to pull for this team. Now the Lakers have shifted to talking about the dreaded buyout market. You know who's not available in the buyout market? Anybody worth a damn. They're going to bring in Spencer Dinwiddie to stink it up and have the locker room hate him because he won't shut up about Bitcoin. This is awful. Misery loves company, so come join me, Bucks fans. Dame has stunk it up by his standards on both ends of the court. Their defense has been terrible thanks to downgrading on that end from Drew Holiday to Dame and also Adrian Griffin's schemes. Apparently, the only thing worse than his defensive schemes was his relationship with Giannis. You can be in over your head as a coach, or you can be unlikable, but you can't be both. So he's gone before the All-Star break of his first season. As he works to become even more insufferable, Giannis pretended to be stunned by the firing. In an effort to free up some roster space for one of those vaunted buyout guys or just get some relief from the luxury tax, they traded Robin Lopez for essentially nothing. Robin is nearing the end of his NBA career, but he's proven he's a capable NBA player. He's also the brother of Bucks center Brook Lopez. You know whose brother they didn't get rid of for roster space or tax relief? Surprise, surprise, Mr. No Input on roster or coaching moves himself, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Congratulations, Bucks fans. Thanasis is still there to play like a vertigo-riddled football player who was born with his hands on backwards. They did get rid of campaign for Patrick Beverley, so that's an upgrade. It was probably necessary too, considering the defensive issues they're having at point guard like we just talked about. I've actually come full circle on Pat Bev. He's certainly ridiculous, but he's grinded out an NBA career. He shows up, he plays hard, and he doesn't seem to hold grudges with people he's beefed with in the past once they become teammates. We'll see how that works out this time around because he and Dame have a history of hating each other. When I think of Pat Bev feuds, Dame is probably number 2 right behind Russell Westbrook, but I doubt it'll cause an issue even if I want it to. For as bad as the Bucks have been, they're still in a great spot, and they have more than enough time left in the season and talent on the roster, despite Thanasis, to make a championship run, but I'm going to be here to hate them as they do. That's just where we are now, and they've underachieved up to this point, so fuck them. All right, I said I'd keep it short and sweet this week, and I feel like I did just that. This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share. Also, don't forget to check out my blog/newsletter, the show notes, which may very well be posted in these show notes if I get it up and running in time. Appreciate you, and I will catch you later.